Hey, and welcome to this episode of Retro Hour. And as you can see from the screen in front of you, today I'm going to be tackling The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, released in 1998 onto Nintendo 64. This was the first official 3D outing for the series. There have been numerous releases across the NES, Super Nintendo, and the Game Boy, but this was the first one that actually came into the full 3D world, and thus there was a lot of expectation on this one when it landed, and landed did. For a long time, this was the highest rated critical game of all time. A critical darling, a financial success for Nintendo, often lauded as one of the greatest video games of all time. And I find it very hard to disagree with that. For one thing, as you're seeing here, it's cinematic and it really goes hard on some of these cutscenes, really kind of creating this ominous feeling that something is going wrong in this world and that you are only a small part in that whole play. And as you can see here, the game very quickly introduces us to the big bad of this lovely green gentleman here called Ganondorf. We won't find that out for quite a while yet. But as you can see, Link is having a nightmare and will be awoken by Navi the furry. Now, Navi is kind of the guide through Ocarina of Time. She basically sits there and she will point out where you're generally meant to go, and she'll be a bit of a nuisance. She was a meme for the longest time over how annoying she can be, especially when, she really wants your attention. But this setup here is basically establishing the story that we're going to be wandering into. Basically, our main character is going to be thrust on a journey that will take them across time and the land of Hyrule. And before the Deku Tree here dies, because it has been cursed, we will need to offer some assistance. So Navi the furry here is going to come and wake us up, which very unfortunate if Link's had a very long night before this. It means that he's not going to be able to enjoy a good slumber. The youth whose destiny it is to lead Hyrule to the path of injustice and truth. Navi, go now, find the young friend and guide him to me. I do not have much time left. So yeah, that is the basic background of this game, and this whole opening section basically serves as a big old training ground to sort of get you ready for what you'll face in the rest of the game. But you have to understand, back in 1998, this was gorgeous. I remember the first time I booted this up, I could not believe the detail that it looks like, and you look at it now, it looks aged, and for note, I'm playing this on an actual Nintendo 64 console because I kind of wanted to get that full realistic experience, because there's a lot of things to talk about with the performance of this one. Navi there banging her head into the fence. But yeah, this was something else when it came out, and yes, there'd been a lot of 3D games on Nintendo 64 by this point, but none of them really matched the scale of Ocarina of Time. And we'll talk about that as we make our way through this opening section. So yeah, we're gonna wake up here. The Deku Tree wants to talk to you. Get up. But you can see that our hero is very reluctant, very unwilling to take part in this destiny shenanigans. Frankly, if they knew what was coming, it wouldn't surprise me if they just rolled over and stayed in bed. But I kind of like how she just turns up in our little house here and starts screaming at us what we have to do. Navi is a bit of a pest at times, and definitely her characterization reflects that. But as we take control of our character here, this is really cool, because you go from that top-down view to this lovely panning shot that sort of reveals the forest from your perspective. And you can see here we've got dynamic characters running towards us. They're going to interact with us. This is Saria. She becomes somewhat important throughout the story. Well, at least at the points that involve the forest. We start this game in the Kokiri forest here. Basically, this area is treated like a little training area. Before you can go to the Deku Tree, we need to get our hands on a sword and a shield, and in order to get a shield, we need to find 40 rupees. So this is teaching the player to look high, look low, and how to kind of get what they need out of the world. But as I mentioned, when this released, it was visually gorgeous, and I cannot understate that too much. The use of graphics in this game, the great texture work, how each of the areas in this world all feel very distinct from each other. We're in the forest here, but eventually we'll go up Death Mountain. It feels very, cold, very barren, feels very dangerous, and then we'll go to Zora's Domain. It feels different. All of these spaces in this game are so well realized, and it's something that I think really helps to set this game apart. A lot of games came out around this time that were RPGs and really wanted to sort of set a nice tone, but I think Ocarina of Time was one of the ones that really managed to smash the ceiling on that. But I actually got this game the same day that I got Doom 64. I remember that I got Doom 64 in the morning on my birthday, and I was so excited because I was a big Doom fan back then, and I played Doom before I went to school. I thought about Doom 64 when I was at school. I couldn't wait to get home and just play it. And when I got home, I remember that my dad gave me this game in the box. It was The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And I had never seen a Legend of Zelda game up to that point. I'd never played Legend of Zelda, and to be honest, I'd never even heard of it. To me, it was a very odd game to get, and I feel a bit bad because I kind of put Ocarina of Time down and I didn't really play it for a few days. I was so consumed with Doom 64 and playing that backwards and forwards and everything. And then when I played this for the first time, I remember the first time that Link walks out onto that balcony outside his house, I was like, whoa. And this is the first kind of game of this type that I really sank my teeth into as a kid. This game really kind of set my expectations for games like this, and it's why this is one of my favourite games all these years later. We'll run around here. That boulder is very bizarre because, who's pushing it? How is it managing to roll like that? Who knows? But we make our way inside here and we can grab ourselves the Kokiri sword. The thing is, the game doesn't really overload you too much with items at the start, and obviously, if you've played other Legend of Zelda games, you kind of understand what's going on here. But as a kid, I thought it was really cool that you didn't just get all the items at once, you kind of got them as the game progressed. You'd get the hook shot, and then you get the long shot, your swords would upgrade through the game, you get new outfits to wear, and it was always really fun to explore this world because it always felt like if you just went far enough in the right direction, you'd get rewarded, even if it was just a heart container of some kind. But the music in this game as well is just so enriching. They really managed to create a great ambience as you're exploring around here. And even though, a lot of these tracks have kind of become very sort of well known and a bit overplayed in the gaming sphere, again, it was great for the time and it helps to set the tone perfectly. You can see as well I've got 43 rupees, so we can grab ourselves a Deku shield here. One thing I always found really cool is that when you head up Death Mountain much later on, if you have this shield equipped and you get burned, the shield actually burns off, and I thought that was so cool as a kid. It was such a neat little touch because obviously it's a wooden shield. Why would it not burn if you fall into lava or fire? But yes, we need to get the sword and shield in order to get towards the Deku tree. And if we try to access this area beforehand, this annoying little kid here, Mido, will basically try to stop us. Mido is kind of presented as a bit of a dick early in the game, but he kind of goes through a small redemption when you come back much later. And that kind of leads me very nicely to the core aspect of this game that I think was really mind-blowing to me back in the day. Now remember, I hadn't played Link to the Past, so the concept of having two different versions of Hyrule that you could explore was kind of novel and new to me as a kid. But when I played through this game, and I remember the first time I got to the Temple of Time and opened it, I kind of didn't expect much outside of like, oh well, you'll be able to go to these new areas. What I didn't expect was the game to jump you forward 7 years and to present you completely different areas to explore. The concept of seeing spaces aged in video games and going back to revisit them is something that I think is very, very underrated, incredibly so in a lot of series, and this is one of those games that really scratched that itch for me because you get to see the passage of time, you get to feel like what you're doing has an effect or what you didn't do has an effect because the world kind of goes to trash. But spoilers, you can see here that the Deku Tree is, well, looking a little worse for wear, let's put it that way. The problem with the story at the start here is that it does dump quite a lot on the player, and it is a lot to kind of throw. The game does take its time to sort of get the story going, because the funny thing is, once you kind of get going, the story doesn't really play that much of a big role in your sort of minute-to-minute gameplay. It's only at key moments where the story kind of reappears and sort of says, hey, remember what you're doing here. But the Deku Tree here is basically setting you up for a massive hero run. And, ooh, I don't want to know, like, what that is meant to be. Like, how he is opening himself up like that to us. I feel like we should push the danger button. But we're going to go inside. He's going to ask a child to enter his massive hole and to clear out all the enemies inside, because the Deku Tree has been cursed, and this serves as the first dungeon of the game. So we're deep inside the Deku Tree here, and you can see that he's had some cowboys in here. There's a lot of things going on in here, and I kind of would like to know, was it the Deku Tree that put the ladders and all that, those platforms in here? Or was it actually the enemies? It's never really explained, because this all feels a bit too carefully crafted to, you know, to just be down to chance. Why did the Deku Tree have these things here? Was this like was he inviting children from the forest into him for years before this? Who knows? Who knows? But this basically sets the stage for what the dungeons are going to be like in this game. This dungeon in particular, it's not particularly difficult. It's fairly easy to work your way through and to kind of work out what you're meant to do. Later dungeons obviously get a bit more complicated, and then you get to the water temple and you just kind of wish, you know, that it wasn't the way it was. We're not going to bother with that chest there because all it does is give you a map, and I'm not particularly fussed about getting a map in this dungeon. We're trying to get through it as quickly as possible. But as you can see here, Navi will stop at various points and she will sort of force you to listen to what she has to say. So this is basically teaching you how to deflect projectiles back at enemies. We don't use that too much in this game, to be honest. In fact, the only times we'll probably use it are when we're trying to get the attention of Deku shrubs like this in the game. But as you can see, it's also telling us a very useful trick that if we hold forward as we fall, we will actually roll forward. Very useful. Recommend doing that every time you fall off a ledge, because most times the game will give you a pass and it'll save you a bit of health. As we make our way through this door here, I think the slingshot's in here. I think this is where we get the slingshot. Now, the slingshot is pretty much the arrow and bow for the younger version of Link. And another thing I found really cool is that you can't use all your items as an adult, and you can't use all your adult items as a kid. Again, it's just one of those little touches that you didn't really see in video games. The slingshot here is going to be incredibly useful for the first few hours of gameplay here. Ocarina of Time teaches you how to use various items, and then when you become an adult, you'll get the bow, which is a slightly better version of this, and you can obviously use the fire arrows with that, the light arrows, the ice arrows, or although who actually got the ice arrows in this game? Let me ask that. Unless you were going for 100%. What's cool as well is that Navi will glow green when there's something interesting in a room that she really wants to draw your attention to. And it becomes useful here because if you kind of knock that platform down, which is what we did, you can use the slingshot there to bring down the ladder. It's nice that they didn't just have her stop the gameplay and explain stuff to you. Sometimes she's a bit more subtle, and it's a very useful aid for gamers, in my opinion. But now we can actually climb this area here. If we tried to climb up here before we got the slingshot, the game basically wouldn't let us do it. You can try, and I'm sure if you did it enough times, you could make your way to the top of this area without too much worry, but, you know, it's better to just get the slingshot. As you reach the top here, you're kind of given a bunch of new areas that you can explore, but eventually the player's going to kind of wonder how they're meant to sort of move things forward. It's hard to get lost in this dungeon, but it is a bit tricky when you first play to figure out that you actually need to jump off this platform onto the web. And as you can see, the web kind of gives way. It's one of those things that the game doesn't outright tell you, and I think that other than Navi kind of maybe referencing it if you take too long, it is pretty interesting that that sort of thing exists here. Now these gold skulltulas, there's 100 of them in the game, and if you get them you can get various items, unlocks, that'll help and assist you later on when you go to Kakariko village. This section here teaches you about using the Deku sticks, and the idea here is that when you see a flame like this, if you need to get a flame to sort of burn something down, then you can use the Deku sticks to achieve that, which is what's going on here. It's a very cool little touch, and I really kind of like how they integrate that into this in a safe way so that the player can't really mess it up, even if they really want to try. So this Deku Shrub is actually going to give us a code for the end of the dungeon, and we need this in order to get into the final boss chamber. The order is 2, 3, 1. It's funny how years later I still remember that order. You can also see that this time the door didn't open straight away. We actually have to hit the eye switch above. Again, teaching the player how things are going to be in the game. One interesting aspect of Ocarina of Time that I think is worth discussing is its development, because Ocarina of Time was originally conceived as a 64 DD title. It was supposed to be the big sort of title that would be attached to that, but obviously when that kind of didn't pan out as Nintendo hoped, development kind of shifted it over to the Nintendo 64 console. And what's interesting about that is that it was originally penned to arrive in 1997, but in the end it landed towards the end of 1998, and it's kind of interesting that this was originally going to be a sort of selling point for the 64DD, because can you imagine if this had not been able to be played on the base N64? It's kind of crazy to even think about, like, how different the sort of landscape of late 1990s video games would be had this been sort of relegated to a peripheral for the Nintendo 64 console. Again, Navi here giving us a big spiel dump. It's fine, like, it's really not that frustrating. As the years have passed, this game has been re-released onto many consoles. It was released onto the GameCube through various bonus discs and promotional compilations. But not just that, it turned up on the Wii, it turned up on the Wii U store, and it's currently on the Nintendo Online service. But not just that, there was also a 3DS remake that made use of the original engine, but kind of upgraded all the visuals. And being honest, I think that's a great remake. If you're looking to experience this in the modern times, I would somewhat push people to experience that, because I think it's a bit more... Oh, messed that up. I think it's a bit more kind of user-friendly for new users. The Nintendo 64 was a great console, but it also had some major performance issues with some of its titles, and at its worst, Ocarina of Time can find itself running at about 15 frames a second, usually around 20 to 25 in a good situation. So it's not the most stable of outings. And that's why I would kind of recommend maybe hunting down the 3DS version. You can see there that that thing hit me as I sort of ran into it. Thanks for that. Once you get used to the combat system in this game, it's really not that bad. This was the game that really pushed the Z targeting system quite aggressively, and you will need to make use of that as you're working your way through the game. The Z targeting does become a crutch for the player, and it's not a bad crutch, but it's something that I think kind of hides and masks one of this game's weaker aspects, which I do think is actually the combat. The combat in this game is not the most fluid, and I think that the likes of Wind Waker definitely are a step up in that aspect. I'm going to drop this block down here so we can actually get back down to this lower area. Now here's an interesting little tidbit for you. What we're about to do here was actually not the intended way of doing this. You weren't supposed to be able to roll like that and have the stick destroy the webbing. And in the when they went back to remake it for the 3DS, they actually took that out because it was considered a bug. But then they put it back in when they got feedback from players that actually that's kind of how we like to do it. And it's kind of interesting that what was originally a bug became a feature for many players. As you can see, we've had to attack these in the order that we were told earlier on. This first dungeon really isn't that difficult. Do you want to ask, how did you know our secrets? That's irritating. It's so annoying that I'm going to reveal the secrets of Queen Goomba. In order to administer the coup de grace to Queen Goomba, strike with your sword while she's stunned. So this room that we're about to enter actually became pretty infamous among speedrunners. If you play the Japanese version of this game, you can basically warp from this room once you've defeated the boss to the final dungeon. It's kind of crazy, and I can't really explain the technological side behind it all, you know, the inner workings. What I can do, though, is tell you that it's pretty cool to see on a speedrun. But unfortunately, we are not speedrunning here. We are entering this really creepy cave. I love how the lighting, by the way, really kind of makes Link stand out when Navi's sort of flying around. It's a very nice touch. You can also see we've got an eye staring at us on the roof there. I see you. Now here's the thing. This boss, it's supposed to be quite difficult, but if you use a Deku Nut and use your Deku Sticks, it's really not that difficult. It's quite funny that people have been able to find ways to exploit this boss to make it easier. And obviously I'm not doing it the most optimal way, but you can sort of free strike it with your sword if you really want to. So the reason I'm using the sticks there is because, shockingly, the Deku Sticks actually do more damage when you use them as a sword than the actual Kokiri sword. And so when we're fighting against bosses that are weak against, you know, strong sword strikes, I'm going to be using Deku Sticks where possible. As you can see, that boss was not difficult at all. And of course, we get the heart container here, and we can leave the dungeon. So we're going to head into the teleporter here. Now, prepare yourselves. This is going to be a long story dump. And like I said earlier on, that one of my critiques with Ocarina of Time, I think, is that the way that the game in the first like hour or so constantly stops to basically remind you of the story to bring you up to date. And I get why they're doing it, but I think that also the way it's kind of handled here, it takes a while, and it sort of steals a bit from the momentum of the early game here. Thou hast demonstrated thy courage. You look terrible still, matey. That's all I'm going to say. Now, I've yet more to tell you. Would you listen? So you can say yes or no here. If you say no, he kind of throws a bit of a tantrum and goes, you really should listen to what I'm saying. And he basically won't let you leave that screen until, you say yes. So it's one of the things this game does. It gives you choices like that, but they're very, non-selective choices. You basically only have one option. So here we see Ganondorf again. Remember him from the opening section where we were just waking up from that dream? Basically, this is explaining that Ganondorf is very slowly sort of assembling his forces and will very soon become a major problem for the land of Hyrule. But only the land of Hyrule. I don't know about Termina. I don't know about any of the other kingdoms. Does Ganondorf's power reach that far? It's never really explained. Ganondorf just seems obsessed with Hyrule, but never any of the kingdoms around it. Maybe he should have gone to those places, because I guarantee Termina would not have put up this much of a fight to stay out of his grasp. But here you can see the furries. We'll be bumping into these throughout the game. They grant us various abilities as we kind of find them. Now, how useful those abilities are, it really depends on how you plan to use them. But you can see here they are creating the land of Hyrule and giving the clouds a very spectacular light show. What I kind of like about this bit here is that these land masses that you see, these are actually spaces within the game. So you can actually visit these later on and be like, yeah, I saw this being crafted. So that's Death Mountain. You can see that the goddesses have been blessing the land with sun and, grass, which very interesting. That's where we are right now. We're literally right behind where we are. And then you can see that with the powers combined, they will create the Triforce. Now, another fun little fact for you. The Triforce was originally actually going to be an item in the game, and you were originally going to be able to go up to it, touch it, and potentially even hold it and carry it. But as the story changed and as things, developed, that section of the game was basically cut out, and it only really exists now in various promotional videos from early on in the game's development and screenshots. So unfortunately, you never get to touch the Triforce in this game. Must never allow the desert man in black armor to take over. You must never suffer that man with his evil heart to enter the sacred realm of legend. Now, the funny thing here is that he's basically telling you here, do not let this man enter the sacred realm. And basically, by setting you off on an adventure in the way that he does, he kind of accidentally creates that situation where Ganondorf enters the sacred realm and plunges Hyrule into years of darkness and evil. So I guess you can say everyone who dies when Ganondorf sort of takes over the world, it's kind of down to the Deku Tree. The Deku Tree really didn't think through this plan. I'm just saying that you can say, otherwise. And I kind of like how Link got so sort of tired there. He just sort of sat down and chilled. you'll meet the Princess of Destiny. Take this stone with you, the stone that man wanted so much. He cast the curse on me. So this is the first stone that we get. We need to collect 3 of these if we're going to access the Temple of Time, which means that there's 3 dungeons that we need to complete. Obviously the first one, we've completed, which means there's 2 more waiting for us elsewhere. We got the Kokiri Emerald. This is the spiritual stone of the forest, now entrusted to you by the Great Deku Tree. And now, the Great Deku Tree is going to take stage left and vacate this world. Like I said, the Deku Tree's poor planning kind of sets up the bad bits of this game in the story, so really, I have to say, it's pretty shocking of him to succumb to this curse and then to basically condemn the world by sending us into, the wilderness, not really fully prepared. Let's go to Hyrule Castle. Let's go to Hyrule Castle. Goodbye, Great Deku Tree. Deku. I'm pronouncing it Deku. I've always pronounced it Deku if you have a problem with that. I like how Navi sits there and she takes a longing look. It's little touches like that that really kind of sell the story of this game. And as soon as you try to leave, people kind of get angry at you. The Great Deku Tree, did he die? How could you do a thing like that? It's all your fault. So yeah, Mido's basically going to go and tell everyone that we killed the Deku Tree, which I guess from his perspective, we kind of did. We went in and then we came out and the Deku Tree kind of died. I want to come in here and quickly just stock up on some rupees. I do kind of like how we can just kind of enter people's houses and basically commit, theft and damage property. It's never really a problem. Are you going to go away? What I also like about the NPCs is that as you kind of progress through certain points, what they say to you actually changes. It's nowhere near as detailed as, let's say Majora's Mask, where it's time dependent, but it's really cool because it does kind of add some flavour to the world. The thing is, as well, like I said, I am just kind of exploring for rupees here before we head out into Hyrule Field. And here's where we get our hands on our first ocarina. So as we're trying to leave here, Saria is going to stop us and she's basically going to be like, hey, you're off on this big quest. I can't come with you, but, I can support you by giving you this musical instrument. I knew you would leave the forest someday. It's quite well framed, this. There is a lot of sort of time and effort that's gone into trying to capture the emotion of these moments. It's quite an intimate moment, this, and I kind of like how the camera work really plays up to the sort of theatrics of what's going on. Obviously, in the 2D Zelda games, this wasn't really possible, but in this game, the cinematics really do kind of elevate things. There's a lot of craning shots, a lot of panning shots, and a lot of camera movement to sort of just showcase these spaces. And like I said, this is the only time there's going to be a cutscene on this bridge, but it just feels perfect for the scene that they're trying to create here. We got our first ocarina here. We can't really do much with it right now. We need to go and see the Princess of Destiny, as she was called. I like that she's just sort of staring at us as well as staring at this musical instrument she's given us. When you play my ocarina, I hope you'll think of me and come back to the forest to visit. I like here as well how Link just kind of backsteps a few and then just legs it. He's not really that fussed about sort of coming back to see. I feel that her character development kind of gets put on the back burner here as well. You can kind of talk to Saria through the ocarina when you learn Saria's song later on. It basically becomes like a little helpline if you get really, really stuck. But as you enter Hyrule Field here for the first time, it's just grand. Like I said, just look at the sort of camera angles here, the sweeping motions, the way that it just kind of makes this space feel so alive and so huge, which is quite an achievement because when you come back to it in 2025, it's really not that big a space and it's definitely not got a lot going on in it. Ah yes, this hoot hoot. This hoot hoot is kind of annoying, turns up quite infrequently, but when they do, they kind of lecture you about sort of what you're supposed to be doing, and basically are like, oh, you've got this, I know you have. And then they'll try and mess around with the way that it's supposed to end. You'll meet the princess there. When I was a kid, I had a theory that this was the Deku Tree sort of reincarnated. Now, obviously, that's not true, but the way that they talk to you, also the fact that like you had to move it down to hit yes to say you understood. If you tried to bash through and press A, he just repeats it over and over and over. But yes, welcome to Hyrule Field, one of the spaces in the game where the passage of time is not fixed. So you basically can walk around the space and it will transition from day to night. Now, like I said, coming back to experience this now, this space does not feel that big. But when you played this for the first time, when you crossed this field in 1998, 1999, it just felt so vast. Seeing the kind of outline of the castle as you're going over that hill, turning around, seeing Lon Lon Ranch in the distance, and seeing just how much space was available here. It was breathtaking, and very few games in the series, or very few games in general, create that sense of awe the first time you play them, and that was definitely one of them. Now you're probably wondering, why am I rolling my way towards the castle here? It's because if we let it become nighttime as we approach the castle, we will be locked out for the night, and it's timed in such a specific way that if you stop at any point, if you don't sort of keep running towards the castle, you are going to get stuck outside. So it's in your best interest to move it if you don't want to be fighting some bony boys outside the castle walls. We're going to be destroying all these pots. That guard there actually kind of finds it amusing that we do this. If you talk to them, they kind of encourage you to do it because they're just bored absolutely stiffless in here. I think, yep, there's a gold skull letter here. Finding spaces like this is very important because even though money in this game isn't super essential, it does make things a lot easier. And when you come into the market square here, it just feels so alive and vibrant. It's pretty great. And obviously these are pre-rendered backgrounds, so it's nothing too impressive going on here. But the fact is, again, it just creates an illusion that really fits what the game is trying to achieve. And the thing is, the only way that you can move things forward here is to talk to people. If you come into this square and you don't talk to people, the game will not progress because she will not move forward, and you need her to sort of move from the square here if you want things to move forward. If you do a bit of exploring like this, you'll find some useful extras. There's a bunch of rupees here. There's also a lot of interior locations that you'll want to kind of explore. For example, if you head into this building here, you'll see that the shooting gallery is actually here. Now, this actually makes use of the slingshot that we acquired back in the Deku Tree. It's little things like this that help to kind of flesh out the world, and while it's nothing new within the scope of games like this, obviously it's a good test of skill, and it's a good way to sort of see if you are actually any good using the slingshot. Now, the good thing is when you're a kid, all of this is done in sort of the same order. So you can kind of prepare for this. When you're an adult, it gets randomized, which I think is a nice little touch and kind of a good little escalation. Okay, so let's see if I can get this in one. No, I did not. No. Luckily, if you mess up and miss, I think it's 2, he'll give you a second chance. It's just the timing of the movement that you know, gets me. Excellent. Now, can I do it right this time? Excellent. Got 10 out of 10. Second attempt, you saw nothing on that first attempt. So the prize you get here is you actually get to carry more Deku seeds, which very, very useful. Obviously, when we're going to be heading through the dungeons, but it also restocks the ones that you don't have. So you actually end up with a full complement of things here. Now, I should point out, very bizarrely, the game actually crashed here. And you'll notice this because when I step out here, it's not sunset anymore. So unfortunately, when I was recording this, that was a slightly awkward thing that happened. Luckily, the edit there kind of hides it, but if you're wondering why we've kind of ended up at a different time of day, that is the reason why. And here is our lovely owl friend again. So I get why he's here at the start of the game, because they're trying to kind of softly guide you towards the Hyrule Castle, because once you hit Hyrule Field, technically the player can go in any direction they want, and some players I imagine got very, very lost. Rather frustratingly here, you've got to head back to the town here. You'll see that that girl that we talked to has now gone missing. That's because she's moved up here. I do kind of wish that it was a bit more elegant than that, because I can imagine some people didn't quite catch that initially, and you do need to talk to her. Talking to her, we actually get the first side quest item of the game, and what I mean by that is that we get this item, we'll use it once, and then it basically can be replaced later on. Right now it's a key item. You need this in order to progress, because spoilers, her dad's fallen asleep inside the castle and we need to wake him up, and this is the only way we can do that. Now, if you talk to her again, she'll kind of tell you that if you wait until the sunrise the next day, you know, the egg will hatch. But what I find really interesting is that this space all around the castle, time moves here, but it doesn't move in Hyrule Castle. So the assumption I take from that is that they really didn't want people to stand in the middle of Market Town and kind of just wait. Do you really want to go through this gate that much? Let me think about it. Okay, but in return, give me 10 rupees. So it's funny because the game wants you to kind of be a bit of a Sam Fisher and go across the top and sneak around. But if you pay this guard 10 rupees, he'll just open the gate for you. Once Ganondorf attacks much later on, you lose this option forever. They'll never let you sort of back into the castle in that way. But it is fascinating that they put that in there as a kind of little thing for players. You have to be careful when walking across this area. If any of these guards sort of see you, and by see you I mean you get too close to them, they will sort of throw you back out, and that means we've just wasted 10 rupees. What you want to do is head over to this wall and climb up. You can see there's a Stone of Truth. If we get the Mask of Truth, it will give us some gossip about what's going on in the world. Little hints, little sort of vague suggestions of things that we might want to investigate. Unfortunately, we won't be able to make use of that for quite a while yet, so it's really just something to look at right now. You can hear some snoring off in the distance. That is the target of our rooster when it wakes up. Quite how he fell asleep in that position, I will never be able to tell you. What I'm going to do here though, I am going to prepare for when he runs off, because once he runs off, you are able to drop the boxes and get inside the castle through the little sort of aqueduct there. No, you can't enter that door there, no matter how much you try. As a kid, I was convinced there was a way to get in there, but alas, there is not. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to cut ahead very slightly because you obviously don't want to stand watching me waiting for the sun to rise. When sunrise comes, you can see here that the egg that we have equipped will turn into a chicken. And what we can do now, we can wake him up. What intonation? How did the first one not wake him up if the second one sounded exactly the same? Can the person get a little shut-eye around here? Hello, and who might you be? Yep, I'm Talon, the owner of the Lon Lon Ranch. I went to the castle to deliver some milk, but I sat down here to rest and I guess I fell asleep. What? Malon was looking for me? I'm going to catch it from her now. I messed up bad, leaving Malon behind to wait for me. She's really going to let me have it. I kind of like how he just kind of legs it like that, and the guards are just like, whatever. You know, this guy that was here for like 2 days, nothing suspicious going on there. So I'm going to drop these boxes down here. Again, the game's kind of teaching you here to sort of make use of the environments. Very clever kind of ways of subtly foreshadowing what you're probably going to be needing to do in future dungeons. Excellent. So when we climb inside this little sort of water tunnel here, we get to go inside the castle. And again, we get to put on our Sam Fisher goggles here. We basically have to avoid the guards. You don't want to get in their line of sight. And by line of sight, anything closer than sort of the end of the road that they're looking at. We're just going to wait for these guards to move. As you can see, they do kind of move of their own accord, and they do move independently of each other, so you kind of got to pay attention to both of them. You can't get away with just, you know, watching one and hoping for the best. This one here gives you the opportunity to go high or go low. The thing is, if you go low, you can get yourself some nice rupees, but we're not too interested in that right now. We're just going to make our way through here. Now, obviously, with this one here, it's all about timing. You've just got to make sure that you move at the right time to get between them. Because if you wait too long, you'll kind of always get caught in the overlap. And if you're curious, when you get thrown out, you just get thrown back out to where the milk boxes were. You don't actually get kicked out to the front of the castle. That would have been nasty. It is pretty nice that you get to see a bit of the inside of the castle, because outside of this, we don't really get to hang out in Hyrule Castle all that much in this game. So we've made it all the way to the courtyard here. So this is the castle courtyard, and this is where we get to meet Princess Zelda for the first time. Princess Zelda is the sort of other main character in the game, and she kind of doesn't trust us too much here at the start. Obviously, random kid breaking into the castle. Why would she trust us? Oh, what's that? Is that a fairy? Then, are you from the forest? Then, then you wouldn't happen to have the spiritual stone of the forest, would you? That green and shining stone? The look she gives you here, by the way, like, do you have it? If you said no, she just kind of does what the Deku Tree did earlier on. She just kind of loops you into like a, oh, come on, show me. I know you've got it. Basically, as well, this is kind of showing that she's also been having some pretty gnarly dreams, and those dreams have been informing her that Ganondorf is probably going to do something very, very bad. I know this is a prophecy that someone would come from the forest. Is it a prophecy? I thought you might be the one. Oh, I'm sorry. You're quite right. I'm sorry. I got carried away with my story and didn't even properly introduce myself. I am Zelda, Princess of Hyrule. The name on the box of the game, basically. And what is your name? George. Strange. It sounds somehow familiar. It's a very common name, Zelda. I'm going to tell you the secrets of the Sacred Realm that has been passed down by the royal family of Hyrule. She is very quick, though, to start telling us, like, family secrets here. You would think that with, her dad being the king, she would be a bit more careful. And I'm going to say no this time just to show you that she does a big pouty face. If you say no, she will literally just do that over and over and over. No. Please, keep this a secret. No, I'm going to tell everyone in Hyrule. Apparently you're telling everyone in Hyrule, so why can't I? The legend goes like this. So once again, we're going to get some backstory. The interesting thing here is that this kind of recontextualizes what we saw earlier on when we were talking to the Deku Tree. So it basically adds a bit more detail. Somewhere in Hyrule. I mean, if I was flying like that all day, I'd probably get a bit tired and want to put the Triforce down somewhere random as well. If someone with a righteous heart makes a wish, it will lead Hyrule to a golden age of prosperity. If someone with an evil mind has his wish granted, the world will be consumed by evil. That is what has been told. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Evil people will do evil things, and good people will do slightly less evil things. So the ancient sages built the Temple of Time to protect the Triforce from evil ones. That's right, the Temple of Time is the entrance through which you can enter the sacred realm from our world. But the entrance is sealed with a stone wall called the Door of Time, yes, and basically it's all flavor text to kind of explain why we need to go on the quest that we're going on. Did you understand, well, that story I just told you? If you hit no here, you are a masochist, because she will tell you the story again. I was spying through this window now. The other element from my dream. I believe they symbolize that man in there. Will you look through the window? Again, the game's giving you a choice here. I'm saying no. Please, if you don't hurry, he'll be gone. Again, I like how the game gives you the illusion of choice, but it's not really choice. What's funny as well is that we never get to go inside that room there. We never get to see inside the castle. We are relegated to just the courtyard and the little sort of gardens. That is Ganondorf. Though he swears allegiance to my father, I am sure he is not sincere. Now, Zelda, what have we said? What have we told you about judging other people from foreign lands before you know what their actual intent is? Although I will say that hairstyle is a choice. Definitely a choice. Green with orange? He doesn't have any idea what we're planning yet. So, spoilers, he actually doesn't know what we're doing. He understands completely what we are planning. And again, it's one of those things where in this game, it's kind of treated at this point like you're doing this like secret plan, but it seems that everyone in the world kind of knows what you're up to. Like, you head up to Death Mountain and everyone up there seems to know what you're doing, and then you head to Zora's Domain, everyone there seems to know what you're up to. So I'm not really surprised Ganondorf kind of figures out our plan long before we figure out that he knows. He wants to conquer Hyrule. No, the entire world. Again, does he want to conquer the entire world? I never see him saying anything about Termina. Please, I don't believe you. I like that she's like, please, believe me, my prophecies have never been wrong. Please. I just love that, like, these are here for no reason at all. The game doesn't need to put these in. They're just here for flavor, and you can just mess around with the characters when they come up. It's quite funny to me. Thank you. That look, by the way, is absolutely terrifying, and yeah, I'm afraid. I have a feeling that man is going to destroy Hyrule. Well, spoilers, he doesn't destroy Hyrule. He just kind of rearranges Hyrule Castle and Hyrule Town. I mean, that's all he really does. He doesn't actually do anything with Kakariko Village, and he doesn't really do anything with the rest of Hyrule. So, you know, maybe he's not that bad. Let's get the Triforce before Ganondorf does, and then defeat him. One more thing. Take this letter. I'm sure it will be helpful. So this replaces the chicken item, and like I said, what happens here is that you'll get these items, you'll use them once or twice, and then the game will basically replace them as and when you need to. We'll be using this to head up to Death Mountain. Well, we would be if I was actually going to play that far. My attendant will guide you out of the castle. Don't be afraid to talk to her. So here we have Impa. Now, the funny thing is that if you shoot slingshots into the windows around this courtyard, you can actually get the guards to throw bombs in, and you can spot some Nintendo Easter eggs, which are pretty neat, but they're also very well known. And to be honest, I want to try getting to Lon Lon Ranch and seeing if I can complete the mini game there before we get to the end of the retro hour here. It is kind of funny though that Saria gave us the ocarina, and now we actually get to use the ocarina like a good sort of half an hour later. I think it's quite funny that the game gives you such a key item and then it's just kind of there until it becomes central to the plot. And it does become central to the plot here because we're going to learn Zelda's lullaby. Now listen carefully. Zelda's Lullaby is probably one of the most iconic pieces of music from the entire series, and it's kind of turned up in various other games in various different ways. One thing I will say as well, Ocarina playing in this version is so much better than it is in the 3DS version. I cannot stand the way they handle the Ocarina and its controls in the 3DS remake. It's just not very well thought out, in my opinion. I kind of like how Zelda, by the way, stood all the way over there watching us. She's kind of obsessed with us a little bit, and it's a bit creepy, so I would definitely like to leave the castle now, please, if that is an option. But yes, Impa takes us outside of the castle and basically sets us on the path to where we need to go next. She basically tells us that we need to go up Death Mountain. The perfect place to send young children that you've just met. A place called Death Mountain. At the foot of Death Mountain, you will find my village, Kakariko. That is where I was born and raised. You should talk to some of the villagers there before you go up Death Mountain. The song I just taught you has some mysterious power. Only royal family members are allowed to learn this song. Remember, it will help you to prove your connection to the royal family. The princess is waiting for you to return to the castle with the stones. So basically, get to it, young lad that we've just met, and I'm putting all my faith in. Quite why Impa doesn't go and get the stones, I don't quite understand. It kind of feels like a cop-out. And, you know, for me, I feel it's very odd that all these people are willing to put their faith into this young lad who's just literally turned up out of nowhere, and they're like, hey, you know, we want to kind of, you know, put all of our eggs in this basket, this particular basket. But instead of going to Death Mountain, I'm actually going to head over to Lon Lon Ranch here. You can do some things here. You can learn Epona song, you can get yourself a bottle, which is very useful. You are never forced to learn Epona song, but if you want to get Epona as an adult, then you really need to come here at some point. I will always remember, by the way, in Breath of the Wild, finding the ruins of this place. It's very sad. It's kind of sad seeing how this place ends up in the long timeline. But we're not here to talk about Breath of the Wild. We're here to wake up you again, because apparently you've just fallen asleep. Mumble mumble. I'm awake already. What? Well, I'll be if it ain't the forest kid from the other day. I mean, technically it was like an hour ago. I mean, like 5 minutes ago for me, basically. So what are you up to today? Got some free time on your hands? Say, how about a little game? I'm going to throw these cuckoos into that gaggle of normal cuckoos. If you can pick them out, then we get a prize, and that prize is the milk bottle with the milk in it. The bottle's more useful than the milk to us, to be honest. In Ocarina of Time in particular, the bottles are super useful. It's really in Majora's Mask where they really get useful. But if you pay attention, you can see where the land and... Nope, that's not one. And as you can see, they do kind of intermingle a lot. Wow, 2 in a row. Can I make it free? No. So the third one's probably going to be over here somewhere. There we go. That wasn't too difficult. If you're not paying attention, that can be a bit of a chore. But luckily, you know, that was not that difficult at all. So I'm going to start wrapping up here because we've just passed the hour mark here. Now, this is the first video that I'm doing for Legend of Zelda on Thatnukemguy channel. Legend of Zelda is one of my favourite series of all time, and Majora's Mask in particular is definitely in my top 10 games of all time. There is a chance that I will make more videos for Legend of Zelda in the future, and I am very open to potentially doing that on the channel. There's so much you can talk about with this series, not just this game, not just Majora's Mask, but the entire series. All of the games have their own flavors, have their own differences, and I just think that, you know, there's a lot that you can unpack and discuss. Now, if people want to see that on the channel, please let me know in the comments. At the moment, as I kind of have mentioned in other Retro Hour videos, I'm kind of experimenting a bit with the formats on the channel. I'm seeing what videos people like, seeing what videos people don't like, seeing what people react to. Before we go and talk to Talon and we get the song for Epona, I'm quickly going to run to the back of the ranch here. But yeah, like I said, if people want to see more content like this, more videos about like Ocarina of Time, there's so much to talk about. Majora's Mask, it is very likely there's going to be a Majora's Mask video at some point on the channel, even if it ends up being just a one-off. So yeah, let me know what you think of Ocarina of Time. Do you think it's one of the best games ever? Do you think it's overrated? Have you ever played it? Or do you just think, you know, it's not that big a deal? Let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.